Welcome to the program. My name is Vince Nigro. On Insights today, Ted Opitz, former MP for Etobicoke. He will talk about the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. He'll also talk to us about the intel community, what we should be doing, and what the latest lay of the land is between Canada and the U.S. Ted Opitz on Insights. Ted Opitz, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Vince.
Our paths, it seems like it's crossed quite a bit over the last 20, 25 years. We have a lot of mutual friends in common. You got the political bug at one point. You were a former MP representing the Etobicoke area.
Yeah.
I believe you defeated Boris Bersin.
Yes.
And who was part of the future bakery empire, and
Sure.
they've been around forever in that whole Ukrainian Polish community. When you decided to take a stab at running for office, was that something that the party came to you, and you ran for the Conservatives? Yeah. Was it something the party came to you? Was something you always had on your radar? How did that happen?
No, I was always interested in politics. I took political science in university, political science and English, and was always interested from a theoretical point of view and what politics was, but I had not been involved directly at that point. And I spent most of my life in the military. So I did 33 years military service. I retired as Lieutenant Colonel. Yep. But before I did that, this is what led into politics. I was working as a staff officer at the Canadian Forces College, and the commandant had to go to a meeting at the Polish consulate that night, and he couldn't make it. So he said, "Ted, you're Polish extraction." And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, some minister named Jason Kenney is giving a speech there tonight, and I want you to go represent the college." So, of course, I put on my uniform and off I went. And I met Jason Kenney, who at the time was the immigration minister and doing multi-ethnic outreach.
Right.
And Jason Kenney is a very persuasive fellow. We had got into a conversation that night. He said, "Were you ever interested in politics?" And I said, "Yeah, I am interested in politics. And I think, my proclivities are conservative. I'm a center-right guy." And so next thing you know, he just kept in touch and contact. And then he started building a team in Toronto, which was actually foundational for me with multi-ethnic outreach. And so what that meant was with Jason, he was an absolute machine, this guy, and he still is. And he's very out there. He's out there pounding away right now on it.
I was going to ask you if you still stay in touch with him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just asked him the other day, but he's a fantastic guy, a real intellect, but really good with the various communities. So they were putting together a team, and at that point, I was a long time doing full-time military work, and I thought, well, I could transition to the reserves. And I said, "Well, what about me? What about me working for you?" And he goes, "But you got the Army." And I said, "Well, I could take a step back from that." And I did. And so I worked for Jason for a couple of years doing multi-ethnic outreach, which was, even at that time, a huge educator for me, because you dealt with all the multi-ethnic communities in the city. We learned a lot about cultures, language, and I wasn't, a young guy. I was in my 40s at this point. And so Jason would trust me to, when he couldn't show up, to do these things for him.
You represent.
And attend the events, make the speeches, which was great too, because standing up in the military and giving a military talk or education or something like that is one form of speaking. But when you're speaking politically to a massive crowd, it's very different. So,
and it's a great training ground. I've been there working for a multicultural minister as well, and it's a great training ground because you get a sense a little bit of everything, and even if you make some mistakes along the way, the audience you're talking to can appreciate the effort when you're doing it. The question I got for you, Ted, is in politics, when people get involved in politics, I run across people that want to run for office, and and they'll say, you got to start as a trustee and work your way up. Well, when you got elected, you went right into the big leagues. I mean, federal politics is considered the big leagues. And it's considered the big leagues.
Yeah, you can look at it.
I mean, so when you get elected, obviously there's a lot of traveling. You got to move on it. When you got to Ottawa, what was it like? as an elected MP.
Well, for the first time, it's really exciting, right? It's and federal politics has always been my thing because obviously
Right.
my defense background and foreign affairs is what I'm interested in the most. And so it wasn't that, I wasn't interested provincial or municipal. And in fact, by the way, a municipal councillor just by themselves has a lot more span of control than an MPP or an MP,
And then,
frankly, right? So, I mean, you got to look at these things differently. But for me, it was about the defense and foreign affairs aspect. And then shortly after, Ukraine ended up in conflict and being from the Polish community. I mean, this and that particular region of the world was quite interesting to me. And watching, the Russian aggression grow from the time I was elected in 2011 to where it is
yep.
today.
So you were born here in Canada.
Correct.
And obviously, you had mentioned you were a lieutenant colonel in the Canadian Army, retired. Just talk a little bit about your military. So, growing up, did you grow up in a military family? Was it something that at a young age you decided that was something you wanted to explore?
I think at a young age I was told what I was going to explore. My dad was a Polish veteran of World War II, and my grandfather had fought before that, and so generational on my father's side for sure. It's hard to say on my mom's because she was nabbed by the Germans when she was 14 and taken as forced labor, so she never truly understood her whole history. But my dad did, and he came from a more privileged background. So my grandfather fought in World War I, and then when Poland regained independence in Piłsudski's legions in the Polish Bolshevik War, 1920. And then my dad, of course, in World War II, fought from the very first day of the war, literally September 1st, 39, and caught, by the Russians. 2 years in Soviet captivity, a gulag, lived to fight another day, fought through Polish Second Corps, Italy, Monte Cassino, Piedimonte, and Ancona, Bologna, and all of those. But I grew up in our Francensos, which is very Eastern European, Polish.
Very Polish, yeah.
And everybody around you is a veteran, right? So you know all their stories, whether it's an Air Force guy, a Navy guy, the Polish Home Army, underground guys. And so it really took a village in those days. But I remember my dad telling me since I was 5, literally, and because I was captivated by his stories and everything, he said, "You're going to serve because you're not going to allow it to happen to Canada what happened to Poland after it was fell into the Soviet orbit after Yalta." And so that was always on my mind. And when I turned 16 and I was able to join the reserves, that's exactly what I did, is I signed up June 1978.
So you're Polish. You're wearing the Ukrainian Canadian insignia on your jacket. What's happening globally with the whole Russian-Ukrainian situation, and with Trump, taking a position? He's trying to solve it because he's got his personal agenda in terms of getting the Nobel Peace Prize and things of that nature. But give us a sense from your standpoint, being here in Canada, because I want to talk to you about the Canadian Army as well in terms of where Carney is going with it. But before that, talk to us a little bit about where you see, is Trump doing the right moves to try to solve this war, or is it just posturing?
I don't think so. I think he's very transactional in what he's doing. He may think it's all very clever, but he's been, alternately berating President Zelensky, as we saw in the White House, a while ago now, and then working with him on a peace plan. And they took the 28th point, which was a Russian peace plan, it was a capitulation of Ukraine, and worked it into a 19-point peace plan. And that's, I think Ukraine has worked on that in great earnest. But today or yesterday, I think Trump said that he doesn't think President Zelensky is ready for peace with Russia, which I find quite ludicrous, because he's really not criticizing Russia at all for being the aggressor. For this war, by the way, isn't 3 or 4 years old. It's started in 2014.
Yeah.
Right. And you got people on the line. I was just at an event today with people from the Ukrainian Defense Academy who described the situation on the ground there over the last 3 hours this morning, which is just incredible what they're dealing with. I mean, I have nothing but superior admiration for that country and for its armed forces, because they really are fighting for their freedom and ours right now on the front lines with Russia, because Russia is an aggressor. Putin is, but people have to remember who he is. He's a KGB guy. Lying is not a problem for him. As we all know, he's eliminated many people right on his own orders. And he's always going to find a way to tell you that he did do it. Right. And so when you get a spate of people like 5 or 6 falling out a window within 2 weeks, that's a message, right? From him to get people in line.
Right. Trudeau was a big supporter of Ukraine with Christy Freeland and that whole workings, and then Carney comes on the scene, and it seems like he is following the agenda. What's your sense of where Carney is with regards to the whole Russia-Ukrainian issue?
Well, I think that he supports Ukraine. I don't think there's any question of that. I don't think despite the rhetoric in question period and other things in Parliament, I don't think any parliamentarian is against, supporting Ukraine and ultimate Ukrainian victory in this war, meaning that they retain their sovereignty as much as their land bases as they possibly can. I think Carney is on board with that. Chrystia Freeland, clearly of Ukrainian origin, and I know Chrystia well. I know her sentiments on Ukraine are strong, clearly, because of her ethnic background on it. I think Canada's trying to do the right things with Ukraine, and we have since 2014. When I was a MP, I found them their first 30,000 combat uniforms. Right now, you look at the Ukrainian soldiers, and they're one of the best personally equipped, in the world right now in terms of all the kit they're wearing and things like that. But in 2014, there was tracksuits and running shoes with the Azov Battalion, and Jason Kenney, who was Minister of Defense at the time, agreed with me. I said, we've got a lot of old uniforms. We changed to camouflage. These were just all of monochrome out of drab, right? Nothing wrong with them. So we sent those to Ukraine, and I just met a colonel the other day that actually got one of those, and he said they were a godsend at the time. But that was just to get these guys started, because at that point, they're not the army they are today. They were very coming out of a Cold War, Soviet type of architecture, and struggling to find their way. They fought off the Russians in 2014 by sheer grit and guts, right? And eventually we got them up to the point, but it's been a stalemate all these years, fighting back and forth, back and forth, until Putin attempted to invade once and for all, but he lost. He got beaten back.
Yeah. Ted, you obviously you have been involved, and you are involved with the Canadian Army, and we're involved in the Canadian Army, and obviously the situation we have with Trump, with the border, that we rely on them to protect us. In the last budget, Carney's made it a point to put more money into military. Do you think it's enough? Do you think that area is an area we should bolster?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think anybody's complaining about the amount of money in there. It's a lot of money right now, and it's good. The trick is going to be able to spend it all. My hope for that spend, though, is that we don't go back in time for equipment. So, for example, one of the big things in the procurement world is the Gripen E that Sweden's trying to sell us. Well, the Gripen E is, in its own right, not a bad aircraft, but it's a 4th generation aircraft, not a 5th generation now. And there's a big difference, So basically, a 4th generation aircraft has older technology, even though you can improve the avionics and so forth. But on radar, it lights up the sky, right? You're seeing you have some issues there. The F-35, by every comparison, technologically, tactically, by studies done by our own Air Force and our own pilots who have stated that they want this, is the aircraft that we need. And not just for Canada, but it's because all our allies are buying it, right? They have it as a platform. And by the way, Canada started in 1997 as part of the Joint Strike Fighter program. We bought into the F-35 to help develop it. We've been making, I can't remember the exact figure, but we've made hundreds of millions over time, and even higher, making parts for the F-35 all this time. We continue to do that. So it's still a revenue generator in Canada, but the most important thing about that aircraft is it networks with all the other aircraft in the sky, the F-35s, but even a Canadian Pole taken a few days ago are telling Canadians are saying it's not, you know, a bargain basement aircraft where you're trying to lower the price per hour. Buy the right equipment for the right price. So people aren't worried about that. And I'll tell you what the bottom line for me is: pilot survivability. I want our guys coming home alive, right, from that. And it's the aircraft that'll do that. If you're flying an inferior aircraft, I don't care if it costs $10,000 less an hour to fly, right? It puts our pilots at risk and makes them vulnerable. What I would do is, and I would encourage this government to do, is look forward. Even Saab has a 6th-generation aircraft that they're starting to develop. South Korea has become a tremendous military industrial power. And Poland, you just look at Poland. Poland has bought the K2 tanks that they're now producing in Poland as K2PL tank. They bought the K9 artillery system and KA-50PL. That's just a ground attack aircraft, so it's not. It is 4th generation, but it's for a specific purpose. And now they bought are about to buy Sweden's 5th generation submarine, which is something Canada might want to look at. But Sweden can look at us and say, well, maybe buy into our 6th generation program, because I think Canada needs to take a strategic bound forward, technically, because we can revitalize, our aviation industry, which means everything from avionics to AI to control systems. So, why do we want to deal with the aircraft of the past? Because what I think that will do with us strategically is the F-35 we'll still be taking deliveries up until probably mid-2030s, I guess. And if you start developing a 6th-generation aircraft then, it should be ready somewhere in the mid-2030s, because that's what our allies are doing. They're looking at aviation mid-2030s and beyond now, and we need to be at parity for this. So I think if we do that, it's going to enhance our industry. It's going to enhance the graduates at school, right, are going to find industries that they can find jobs in. And Canada will be on parity, not only with our allies, but with our adversaries.
Right. Ted, you had mentioned, or just in passing, that Putin is a former KGB. We were talking a little bit off camera. In the United States, you got the CIA, you got the KGB over there, you got the other secret services. Here we have CSIS. The intel community here is pretty weak. And I think we need a little bit of bolstering in there. Talk a little bit about CSIS and where you think we could bolster a little bit our intel globally here in Canada.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say about CSIS is there's outstanding people working at CSIS. They're really, really smart.
Right.
But you can only do what you can with the tools that you have and the funding that you have available to you.
Right? I agree with that.
So, and I've had some interaction with them in the past, and they are very, very smart. They know where the vulnerabilities are in Canada. It's hard to address all of them, and our biggest vulnerabilities, of course, are Chinese interference, and in a big way. Right, even so-called allies, as we know, India has had some challenges that we've had recently with them penetrating, and some of their domestic politics have spilled out here into Canada, and of course the Russians and the Persians, or the Iranians, sorry, they all embed within their own diaspora, so which is hiding in plain sight sort of thing, right? So there's a lot of that going on, and that needs to be managed better. I think it needs better coordination between CSIS, the police forces, and judges to be able to not only identify those threats, but then act quickly with warrants and the police powers of arrest. I mean, that's a really big topic right now to talk about. And the RCMP, I think, needs some reform to be able to accommodate that role very well. But what I think we need the most right now is actually getting into a foreign intelligence agency. We depend on the Five Eyes to be able to give us intelligence from around the world. But I don't think we can depend on that anymore, because right now President Trump could decide not to give us anything, or he could say hold back. So same with other allies. I don't think they would want to do that, but they all interdepend, right? So if all of a sudden you've got this weak link that's rationing information, I mean, that limits Canada in what it can do and how we can impact and get that information. We need to be able to develop our own human resources, like it's called human intelligence outside of Canada, and we need to be able to make changes to our constitution to allow that. That's what it takes. So it's going to take a lot of legislation to be able to make that happen. And the ironic thing is, a Canadian helped set up the CIA. Sir William Stevenson, by his code name, was a man called Intrepid.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, who helped Wild Bill Donovan when it was the Office of Strategic OSS. I forgot the second S, but they transitioned into the CIA in 1948, I think it is. And Sir William Stevenson, who was a spy, big businessman, spy, ran the SOE, Special Operations Executive, and other branches from New York, including Camp X, which was located in Whitby, Ontario, which trained SOE agents for the war. A lot of people forget that we had a secret intelligence base in Canada throughout the Second World War.
When you listen and you observe Trump and his actions, in many ways, I think he did us a favor here in Canada by getting us to really come together, revisit a lot of our, whether it's intel, military, the board, or whatever, staying Canadian, true to Canadian. I know some folks that have gone down to the States in the last little while, and they've told me it's not like it used to be. People are really staying here. We're buying Canadian. So in many ways, I think he may have did us a favor by bringing us all back together and having us revisit all these issues.
I agree with that. There's an opportunity here, because you're right. He shook us out of our malaise. And by the way, that Europe and everybody else too, who depended on the U.S. Defense umbrella and things being the way they were since the end of the Cold War. Well, they're not, right? And so this brings up opportunities now to enhance our own industry, whether it's steel or others. I mean, Trump is now threatening to tariff our fertilizer. I think that came out today. I mean, it's one tariff after another kind of thing. And I think this is the opportunity for Canada now to build our resiliency in our own economy. I think those measures are being taken. Mr. Carney's move with the MOU with Alberta, right, I think is positive.
Positive.
In terms of getting energy flowing. I mean, he's going to have challenges politically with, of course, BC, which constitutionally he can do it. But of course, you've got to consult with Native communities and so forth. But I think he'll navigate that, not necessarily because he's the great deal maker. It's because I think Canada's realizing it has to go this way. We have these resources we have to take advantage of. We have massive energy reserves.
Especially our water reserves, too.
Especially our water reserves. And Europe wants this. They want our LNG. Yeah. They want our gas. We could easily supplant, if we start producing this quickly, Russia. Russia, has made, $938 billion still selling oil. Right?
Ted, it's been quick, and we want to thank you for coming on the program and giving us a glimpse from your eyes in terms of the perspective of where you've been, where we are, and where we're going. And the Ukrainian thing is something that I think all lines come together and know it's the right thing to do. And hopefully, with Canada making some of these changes, whether it's through CSIS, the intel community, bolstering our military, it's all positive towards building a better country and helping people like in the Ukraine and across the board. So I want to appreciate you coming on the program and giving us your intel from your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the program.